You need to make a conscious decision that you want this culture, you want people to be owners. But then the biggest challenge, and by the way, that's the biggest challenge also for many technical people, is to let go. Because they will be making stupid stuff.
Yeah.
They will be making mistakes. And you need to swallow that this is the mistake and maybe explain to them why this is a mistake. Maybe you will need to pull some levers just, to fix it. Maybe you will feel financial pain for it because they will learn, but they need to be allowed to learn.
Dzień dobry, and welcome to the Business of Microsoft Partners podcast, where we empower the Microsoft community through conversations with leaders, practitioners, and consultants of Azure and Microsoft solutions. My very special guest today is Tomasz Onyszko, who is joining us live from Warsaw, Poland, one of my favorite countries in the world. Tomasz is the co-founder and CTO of Predica. At its height, Predica was a 400-person Microsoft consulting practice headquartered in Warsaw, Poland. Predica was recently sold to SoftwareOne for an undisclosed amount. Tomasz has worked with organizations across the world ranging from all sizes, from small, medium businesses to companies with more than 100,000 employees. Tomasz is a 14-time MVP and Microsoft Regional Director, recognized for his technical excellence and community leadership. Tomasz is also the host of the CTO Morning Coffee Show, where he shares his knowledge and experience with senior and aspiring technical leaders. Tomasz, thank you so much for joining the show and welcome.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for having me. And it's always good to listen to this from somebody else.
Okay, very good. Very good. Well, Tomasz, I want to get started. We've known each other for years. I had the pleasure of coming and visiting you in Warsaw. And quite frankly, you and your co-founders of Predica have had tremendous success. I think it's even more impressive doing it in Poland, where you built just a wonderful organization, over 400 people working around the globe, one of the top Microsoft partners in the world. And you ultimately sold Predica along with your co-founders about going on 2 years now is when that sale was done. So again, just tremendous amount of success. You built that company with your co-founders over 13 years. Take us back to what was it like that day going into the closing table? You've put blood, sweat, and tears. You're sitting with your co-founders and you're getting ready to sign the papers to sell your baby to another company. What's going through your mind there?
Let's start with the scene. So probably you saw all those movies with, lawyers, table, papers, and everything. So it was exactly like that.
Okay.
So a bit of a backstory, and that wasn't shared with anybody before. I don't think so in public. It's a closing the deal is kind of like a fragile stage. Yeah?
Sure.
So it was a bit like we got a buyer, we were selling, and every day it was maybe we will close today, but then it didn't. So literally we got like a suit handing on at home, and it was like, if you will get a call, you need to get to the lawyers. Yeah. So we got a call like 7 or 8 p.m. or maybe a bit earlier, but in the evening. So I jumped into the suit. We would get to the office, and it is exactly the scene. Like you have a huge table, you have a 2 set of lawyers, and 4 of us plus our CFO. The only difference, by the way, and that's also a bit of a backstory, is that entire process was done during COVID.
Yes.
So everything was done remotely, and we had this huge screen with the TVs, and all the buyer side, they were on the TVs. Yeah. So.
So you weren't in the same room together?
No. It was done remotely.
Oh, wow.
So actually, we've met buyers only after the deal was done, like in person. We dealt with the lawyers. And then it's, so it was like, this is it. I mean, this is the moment. The proceeding of that in my head was done a bit earlier, because that's something we've learned during the process, that we actually discussed this upfront. And So we made some decisions, we made some agreements, and we said like, if this will be the amount, this will be the conditions. So
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of this emotional state was done upfront, like decision was
Okay.
made. Yeah. But so it was a bit relaxed, but also like tense because there's like hundreds things on the checklist.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, and we finished around like midnight. And
Wait, so you get the call at 8 o'clock at night,
yeah,
7 or 8 o'clock at night, and it's not the next morning. It's you need to get down to the conference
yes,
room now.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so and there was two sets of lawyers. We got all these things. The buyer's side, they were going through the checklist. There was a lot of to-do stuff to be done. People invoked in a specific moment for legal reasons.
Hmm.
Uh, so, and we were just sitting through it, and then in the end, it's really anticlimactic because in the end, you are getting the paper and there's the four of us and we're just passing this paper between each other and just laughing and making the signs on it. Yeah.
That's
And that was it.
really okay. That's fascinating because I guess that's interesting because you all had talked about everything up front. You and your
Yeah,
founders
yeah, yeah, yeah.
had gone through all those emotions up front before the actual event, and then it was kind of a non, I don't want to say non-event, but
No,
you
it
had
was
already gone
event.
through.
It was tense. I mean, there is a lot of details, but those
Mhm.
details were ironed out during the weeks and months before. Yeah,
Right.
and one thing, and if anyone will be in this position, I advise it strongly, is we made an agreement. What are the conditions to sell company if there will be a possibility to do it, and who can make the call? So in the end, I could make a call for all of us. Uh, but we made the call, yeah. And once we
Okay.
made the call, the rest is just procedures. It was more about there's really like hundreds of thousands of details. So it's even in the end like, okay, like my wife was somehow involved in a company at one point in time, and there was
Hmm.
something where because I have a wife and I have a shirts,
Sure.
and she's like we have a martial, like that's marriage, so it's like our common value, and I need to get her signature, so we had to make sure that our wives are
Oh
available, and
wow.
so on and so on. Yeah, so you know. Uh, but in the end, it was funny. We got a support from White and Case lawyers, really top notch professional. The other side was also top notch professional. So it was a lot of going through those details, exchanging all kinds of possible anecdotes, and just waiting. Yeah, and at midnight, I just got home. I got a drink and I went to sleep. Honestly.
That's fantastic though. That's an incredible story. I mean, you would think that again, doing all that through COVID, number one, just you think about the challenges of having to try to get all that done. And then it's fascinating to hear that there wasn't an actual like closing time where you'd think that it would be scheduled way ahead. It's just hang by your cell phone and just wait for the call.
Yeah, so I don't think there is a deal with the closing time. It's more like there are things to figure out, and
Hmm.
even to the last minute. Also, a learning for others to share is that don't assume it is done until it's done. We didn't have
Yes.
any issues with that, but literally this kind of deal can fall through at any moment, even at the signature time. Yeah, so be prepared and just handle the stuff.
It your description of the sale of Predica sounds very much like what it's like to get a mortgage here in the US.
Yeah,
Is that
I think
it's
so.
not done until it's done. There's
Yeah,
10,000 pages to sell and the deal could fall apart at any minute.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. Yes, that's exactly. We removed a lot of those things from the equation, but till the very last moment, you don't know. Yeah, so it's really delicate stuff. But uh, for us, the majority of this was done upfront. So there was no like tense, like, oh my god, what I'm doing. It was like, okay, so it will happen today. So this is the moment. It will happen today. Tomorrow is a day, but that will be a different day. Yeah.
right. Well, and again, the whole thing of just I think this goes back to, I'm sure this philosophy permeated was something that you did all the time when founding Predica, is that it sounds like you had a well thought out plan about how the sale was going to go, how that transaction was going to go. And then you were appointed the decision maker to speak for the team ultimately about that transaction.
Not
So it made,
yeah, not alone. There was a like setup, but again, a piece of advice maybe for somebody. So yeah, we made the decision that we are going into the process,
mm-hmm.
but we haven't made the decision about the outcome of the process. We assumed like it might not happen.
Yeah.
So we said, okay, so part of the founders, they will be driving the process. Part of them will basically run the company like there's no tomorrow. And that was till the very last moment. Yeah. And
Wow.
in the end, that was the outcome.
Wow, that's an amazing story. So let's maybe booktail this or bookend this with the beginnings and how you got started in the computer industry
Oh, yeah.
and technology. And so to set the stage for the audience, Tomas and I grew up during the Cold War, and I know for a lot of people listening to this show, this is probably going to sound incredibly alien. But back then, during when Warsaw was behind the Iron Curtain, it was extraordinarily difficult to get any type of Western goods, even getting money to buy U.S. goods and services or Western technology was extraordinarily difficult. Tomas, tell us the story about how you and your family purchased your first computer. You didn't just go down to like the local Best Buy or Circuit City and pick up a computer. What did you and your family have to do to get a computer? So what was your first computer, and let's hear that story.
Like the first computer I owned was Atari 65XE. Yeah.
A classic.
And that's really hard to explain to somebody who didn't grow up behind the Iron Curtain.
Hmm.
But so literally, it wasn't even hard to get a currency. It was illegal. Yeah. So it was illegal
Okay.
to to have the US dollars.
So it was illegal.
But
So yeah,
yeah,
wow.
yeah. So you got a special booklet, or basically, if you purchased the US dollars legally, there was noted in this booklet how many of them you bought, and so on and so
Hmm.
on. But one thing I will tell you about all those kind of systems is that there is also always like legal and like shadow state. Yeah,
Yeah, sure. The black market.
and
Yeah.
Poland, by the way, is very good at solving that kind of a shadow market.
Okay. Something to keep something to
Yeah.
keep in mind.
So we are very resourceful people, and but then a bit of a backstory. The Communist Party had a problem because they weren't able to produce the goods. They had to buy the
Hmm.
goods from the outside, and US didn't want it to our police pay like us pay them in a police waters, so they had to pay we had to pay in the US dollars. So then the question is how the government will get US dollars. So they figured out that they will make a stores. They made the stores which has all the Western goods,
Okay.
but you can only pay there in the US dollars, which are illegal. So they knew that the people have money, like a Western money, the hard currency, and they figured out that if they will make a stores with the Western goods, so we will take those US dollars and we will pay them hard currency for those money, and they will use this hard currency to pay to the Western companies and governments, whatever. Yeah. So that was the
So they
system.
so they opened up stores so
Yeah.
they could purchase Western goods with illegal money that you shouldn't have
Yes.
anyways.
So I was first introduced to a computer by my uncle, and he was accountant. My father was accountant, and by the way, by the education, I'm an accountant.
Oh, really? Okay.
Really, yeah. And they were doing the accounting for enterprises here in Poland, and they were doing this by hand. And my uncle convinced his boss to buy one of the first PC XT,
Hmm.
and they bought two of them. So my father was doing the work with my uncle, and they did months job in one evening on this computer. Yeah, and there was a second one, so I was playing Bushido on it. So,
Okay.
and then I somehow got hooked into it, but you couldn't get a computer. Also, to give you the idea, we didn't have a landline like a phone.
Hmm.
And I was living in a remote village on the west, on the German-Polish border. Yeah,
Okay.
nobody had a computer there. And every time I was visiting the city, which was like 30 kilometers from us, so there was one of those shops, yeah, with this Western goods, and they
Yes.
got this computer in there. the Atari
So it was
65XE.
just calling your name every time you went by the store.
So I was actually going in and in. And then my parents, they decided that they will buy one. So they literally bought a currency on the black market and they purchased one for me. Yeah. Interesting part, before that, I bought a book which was called Atari Basic.
Okay.
And it had a keyboard of Atari 800 XL on the back cover. And believe it or not, I was a 10-year-old kid and I was learning to program myself on this printed keyboard.
Oh, really? Wow. That's some dedication.
Yeah.
That's some dedication.
So yeah, I got my first Atari 65XE bought by illegal money in this shop, and but we didn't have any programs. You cannot go to the store and buy a game or whatever. So you had to, for example, buy a newspaper, the magazine, and it had a machine code printed there, and then you were typing this machine code.
Oh, I remember those. Yes. So you wrote, so literally you just took that code from the magazine and you would just program it into the machine.
Yeah, and then you were asking your mother to be like, do not turn off this computer for the next 3 days, whatever, because I want to play this game.
Right. Oh,
That was
wow.
the beginning. Later, because somehow they saw that I'm into it, and later they also decided to buy me a PC computer. Also, to put it into perspective, that was after the Berlin Wall fell down. But for them to buy me a PC-80, that was like 2 or 3 months of salary. And
Wow.
they were able to buy me a PC with a Hercules card without hard drive. And that was my first like PC.
That's incredible. What an amazing story. So a question here, and again, not to be too personal, but you grew up behind the Iron Curtain. Your parents did. You've seen so many changes. You've had tremendous success. What do your parents think about all this?
So my dad passed away
Um,
already, but he was probably proud of me.
yeah,
They didn't know till the end what I'm actually doing.
yeah,
It was also always, during Christmas or something, they asked me like, okay, so what are you doing? And because, yeah, they were working hard. And, the first thing you see in people who are working hard, they have a hands like hard,
yes,
because, and my are soft. And they were also always asking like, so how you earn money and your hands are soft? And I said,
yes.
I do this stuff with the computer. And in the end, I got like, okay, it's hard to explain. So in the end, I was just saying, Mom, I'm typing on keyboard. Yeah.
She didn't
My
think you were
dad,
working.
yeah, my dad was though a different story though, because he was an accountant, and after the communism fell, so he had to figure out what he's doing. And I'm extremely proud because my mom, she just finished elementary school, and when the communism fell, she was working at the store, and her choice was to become unemployed, or to become the store owner. And she basically, in a like snap, said, okay, so I will run the store.
Wow.
And they were running the store, and my dad, he went into the computers like for a job. And even like he passed away a couple of years ago, he was still using Norton Commander. Yeah, so
No way. Well, still, I'm sure that he's got to be extraordinarily proud of your success and everything that you've accomplished. So, just an amazing story. Well, let's progress a little bit more in your career. And for those of you that want to learn more about Tomas's progression, he's got a wonderful blog post up on his website called "My Path to Where I Am Now." It actually came out a few years ago prior to the sale of Predica, but it's just a wonderful journey, our story of Tomas's journey to how he became the founder of Predica. So, Tomas, to skip ahead a few steps here, you ultimately became an employee of Microsoft, and prior to founding Predica, you were out on your own as an independent consultant. Could you tell us a bit about what was it like working for Microsoft back then, and how that really helped launch your career?
So Microsoft is a huge company. We know it. It has also like companies within companies. So I was not product. I was Microsoft Consulting Services here in Poland. Uh, so and also the geography plays a role. US is different than Europe.
Sure.
Europe is different. Like each country in Poland is different, and the situation was different back then. So I started with MCS around 2005. Yeah, and at that time, at least in Europe, in US, I know that the consultants were flying around from state to state, cities.
Sure.
In Europe, the situation was a bit different because we were working within countries, and Poland was especially, we have a different language. It's not English, also not French, not German, a bit of different economic state, and so on. So it wasn't very common back then for Polish people, Polish IT consultants to work abroad. But there's also a funny story how I got job at Microsoft.
Okay.
I was at MVP Summit. I was MVP back then, first time or second, and I've met some guys who were doing identity management, and I was into AD, Windows Server, Active Directory was my thing, and they were speaking about this stuff, identity management, and so on, so on. There was a ILM server, it, or MIAS back then. By
Yeah,
the way,
MIS.
first MIAS deployment was done in Poland. And then the headhunter invited me for an interview. I was working at HP, and I said, "Look, if it's not Microsoft, I'm not going because I'm not interested." And he said, "Oh, so maybe you will come. I cannot tell you, but maybe you will take this meeting." And
Okay.
I've met the guy who was running MCS here, and he talks with me. He wanted to hire me as a TAM, technical account manager. But he asked me, like, what do you want to do? And I said, look, there is this identity management stuff, but nobody is doing this in Poland. And he said, oh, we are doing it. And I don't have a position then for you here, but if I will have a position for IDM consultant, I will call you. And like 4 months later, he just called me and hired me on the spot. Yeah.
Wow.
So, so that was the story. And the thing is that there was a guy leading this MCS part here in Poland who had this idea that MCS was and is still high to everybody from MCS, but it's expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
expensive. Yeah.
so MCS was expensive also in Poland, and he said like, okay, so Polish market can like feed only that number of consultants with those rates. So how I can grow it up? And he said, okay, so there's the entire Europe and the world outside. So we were one of a few MCS teams in Poland who were flying around and doing the projects abroad. And nobody knew identity and access management. So every call for IDM project was landing in Poland. And we
Wow.
were doing projects in Denmark, Germany, UK, UAE, Dubai, Saudi Arabia, all over. Yeah. So how it helped me was that actually back then it showed us that you can build a business out of Poland to work internationally and go global. Yeah.
Yes.
So that was part of a foundation later for Predica and for myself that you are not limited by the local market. You can do it
Yes.
globally. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a fascinating story, and again, just incredible how MIS and identity management helped you get off the ground. So you ultimately ended up leaving Microsoft and becoming an independent consultant. But in your blog post, you talk a lot about, or you talk about in one section, here's where the magic happens that really helped propel your career forward. Could you tell us about what that magic was, or what those key ingredients were to really help launch your independent career prior to leaving Microsoft?
So whatever you're doing right now, if you're independent consultant or you're employed, and you might be brilliant. And now I don't want to ruin your show,
Hmm.
but there are people better than you. I mean,
Of course, yeah,
yeah.
of course.
And the only thing is that it's a question: will somebody spot you or not?
Hmm.
Yeah. And there's also an anecdote. I was on a train with one of the fellow IT company owners here in Poland, and he said, like, I was playing a soccer, like a European football.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you know who Lewandowski is. It's a famous Polish soccer player. Yeah. And he said, look, all the soccer fields are full of Lewandowskis. It's just he got the luck that somebody spotted him in the moment he was good at. Yeah.
Hmm.
So I really attribute a lot of things I achieved to the fact that at one point in time I was very vocal on the Usenet, if people remember what it was, like
Yeah,
online
Usenet. Yeah,
forums.
the old
But
bulletin
yeah,
boards. Yeah.
yeah. And then on the one of the Polish NT dedicated, like Windows NT dedicated forums,
Hmm.
and I wasn't the best, but I was there. And if people asked, I was responding. And people started to notice it that I am responding. And then in 2001, I remember somebody just called me out of the blue and said, will you do a talk? Yeah. And I was driving through Poland, believe it or not, navigating it like the road with the GPS I bought in an MVP store
Okay,
on
there you go.
Encarta.
There you go.
So yeah, I started to be recognized by the fact that I was speaking. That gave me the idea to start a blog in Polish
Hmm.
first. Then I started a second blog in English uh, around Active Directory and so on. That in the end elevated me. That people saw that I'm doing something. I got nominated for a first batch of Polish MVPs. First batch of Polish MVPs, Microsoft was nice to sponsor our as a trip to US. In
Oh
the end,
yeah.
I've met a lot of people at MVP Summit, and then I saw like, look, I'm at the same level as they are, and that started the network. And then you are a part of this network, and the rest is history. But being vocal, having an opinion, and not being afraid to talk,
Yes.
not being afraid to show up. I always repeat to people who reach out for advice is that the only thing which is different between you and the person on the stage is that this person decided to be on the stage. The rest is equal.
Right. Well, and it's really interesting that you bring that up because, to your point, there's going to always be somebody better. There's always going to be someone who's more knowledgeable out there. Um, but really, the ultimate reason why people get picked is because they're standing out, they're
Yeah.
visible, they're willing to put themselves out there, even if they're not necessarily the smartest or the most technically brilliant. The fact is that they're willing to stand out and put themselves forward, and people who buy services or ultimately are going to make some type of buying decision are going to pick people that they ultimately can know, like, and trust. And that comes through writing and the speaking and things like that you mentioned. So that leads me to another natural question here is that obviously the speaking, the writing, that was circa 2005, 2010, those type of areas. If you were starting again and really trying to mobilize that type of visibility, how would you do that today? Would you still be blogging and going on the user forums? What would your strategy potentially be for something like that to build a personal brand?
So I would be writing. Ultimately, that's one thing. It's really like not one thing. You have to do many things. But
Hmm.
one advice I can give you or to the audience is that own your stuff, like own your place. Yeah. So make a blog and you're on your own domain, own the place, and then
Hmm.
put a long story, long form writing there, whatever you want. Yeah. But then the truth is that everybody writes, but it's like 20% is writing or recording, whatever, 80% is distribution.
Yes.
And you cannot kick with the horse. I don't know if it's the proper English
You can't keep the
saying,
horse
but
in the barn,
yeah,
perhaps. Yeah.
because you cannot argue that people should come to your blog. You have to
Right.
go to the people. Yeah. So
Yes.
think where your audience is, who is your audience,
Hmm.
and then go there, like Medium, Substack, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever. Yeah. The thing is that you need to be consistent. You need to do it for a long time. You need to know what you are doing, and you need to avoid writing and speaking about things which are just momentarily. I mean, not valid for a long time. Yeah.
Hmm.
So don't write how to tweak something in a specific version of a library, but okay, make a challenge. What the challenge are you solving? Yeah, or you some experience, because ultimately it's a visibility game. Yeah.
Right.
So I will be still doing it right now. It will be more like knowledgeable. Like, yeah, I will go maybe do some video. I'm
Video as
doing right
well.
now. Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So again, that's wonderful advice about starting over here and how you build your brand. So you were an independent consultant for quite a while, and then you ultimately you were having tremendous amount of success as an independent consultant. I think looking at your blog, I think you were making over 100,000 a year in Poland as an independent consultant. So that was a tremendous amount of success, especially in Poland, really for anyone. But then you had the chance to help form Predica, and you had a young family at the time also.
Yeah.
So why? What did you see with the founders and the opportunity to start Predica? What made you take the chance of, hey, I've got a wife, young family, I'm making great money, I'm going to roll the dice, so to speak, and go into business with several other people that you kind of knew, but you weren't really close to them. Is that correct at the founding time, or how well did you know
Uh,
them?
yeah. So we knew we knew each other from Microsoft.
Hmm.
The difference was that when I joined Microsoft, one of the co-founders, Andrzej, was already employed there, and then he quit.
Okay,
Other two, they were hired as interns.
as the
Uh,
interns. Okay.
yeah. Uh, so I did a kind of mental exercise with the family, and just jumping across the board for
Hmm.
being independent / company before. So that wasn't in an equation back then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it was in a different sense, because what you mentioned is that, yeah, I did pretty well as an independent consultant. I even
Hmm.
started to hire like 2 or 3 people. Yeah.
Sure.
And what I didn't account it for, and I think a lot of independent consultants are not accounting for, is the support and amount of work which is coming with a success. Yeah.
Yes.
And then as an independent consultant, you have this trap that, okay, I will take the next assignment, I will take the next assignment, and so on. So at one point in time, I just found myself working like 16 hours
Hmm.
and doing the project work, then doing some offers, like proposals, answering
Yes.
the emails, and then doing the support, and so on, so on, so on, so on. And I just found myself like totally crushed, honestly. And yeah, we got a firstborn, and for the first 12 months, he wasn't sleeping well, and I was traveling a lot, like
Oh
for two
wow.
weeks to Middle East, then getting back, then managing people, writing code, kid, and so on and so on. So honestly, I was exhausted. Yeah.
Okay.
Uh, the guys started Predica before. I mean, at the same time I went independent, they started
Hmm.
Predica. Predica had a bit different profile. It was more like a software house back then.
Okay.
But they got lucky, and they got one of the big customers later for us, Maersk, hooked on it. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Maersk.
And Maersk was doing with Predica the identity management. That's
All
okay.
goes back to all. It all
Yeah.
goes back to MIS. So.
Yes. And the guys were not like that. That wasn't their focus. That was my
Mhm.
focus. And we started to cooperate each other. And then actually that was them. They had this idea. Okay, so maybe we'll get this stomach into the equation. And believe it or not, they did SWOT analysis on me. I saw it later.
No way, really? Did they bring that to the closing table with the attorneys to
No, no,
review?
no,
No.
no. I did it after I saw it after I joined, but there was a SWOT analysis, and then they sent Andrzej, the guy who I knew best, and he was like, he literally like visited me at home. We sat with a coffee, and he said like, "Look, I have this idea that maybe we should work together." And I said, "Brilliant! I had the same idea," and because that was solving my like exhaustion. Suddenly,
Yes.
I had a scale
Yeah.
and I brought the business. I didn't knew, but also it saved the Predica a bit at this moment, because there was a downturn in the software development. I brought the
Hmm.
identity project, and we pivoted into IDM space. And also, I was doing business in Middle East, so the guys jumped on it. They flew to Middle East as well, and we
Oh
started this
wow.
thing. but that was the decision was driven by the amount of work I was doing, honestly.
No, it makes
I
sense
would
that
die.
you were exhausted. You were exhausted, and you're like, "Hey, Andre is going to solve my problem by taking away all of my admin stuff."
So it was probably a bit like Andre was looking for a, life saving for a company with some work and maybe, working better with Merck, scaling his
Hmm.
business. I was looking for life saving with a support. We just haven't spoke this language. It was more
Yeah,
like, yeah. And then we did some negotiations, but the guys, yeah, that was the foundation of Predica. From the beginning, we got a lot of trust, so it was really straightforward.
that's fantastic. That's a great story. So I guess take us through the story of Predica. So you started out, I think, with 20 employees. You'd scaled up to 20 employees. Then you dropped back down to 10. And then ultimately, things started to improve and you started to have a lot of growth. What would you say in your time at Predica, what were some of the hardest challenges that you had to face as a business owner? I'm sure that we could probably have a podcast on that question
Yeah.
alone.
pick
But just out
pick
of
one.
curiosity, what are the one or two major events that stick out here?
uh, so for anyone thinking about starting company, so there is the one thing which right now I'm repeating, but also before, like, decide if you want to make money or start company. Even if you look at the blog post of mine, you will notice that there was a drop. I
Yeah,
was
a
doing
significant a
100,000.
significant drop. Yes.
Yes, I was doing 100,000. Then I scaled. I joined Predica, and I was like scrapping some, way below salary I could get
Yeah.
on the market. Uh, but that was the different philosophy. We were looking how to establish a company. There was a goal to build a company, not just have like a fast, easy money. The challenges are different. I mean, at every point of a company, you will have different challenges. Yeah. So I joined when Predica was 10 ish,
Hmm.
and I brought a different line of business. So for us, it was the moment I joined Predica, we were actually like pivoting from software house. We were crazy enough to think that we can build a product for lawyers in the cloud, like
Oh,
lawyers in the
wow.
cloud, 2009, not
No,
working.
did not work. No,
Yeah,
no,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
no.
So there was first pivot was like a product company, then it was software house company, then we got some projects in IBM space, but and then was one of the hardest moments at the beginning because we got company scaled for a software house, like writing code, and we didn't secure enough projects. But we were hanging, and I think that's a common mistake for businesses as well. We were hanging on this idea that this huge customer will give us this next project in the couple of weeks, and next
Hmm.
couple of weeks, next couple of weeks. So in the end, literally, there was a moment in time that we had to cut like a staff because we were hanging on this idea that this next project would materialize for too long, and then we had to scale from 20 to 10 again, or from even 30 to 10. Yeah.
So that was on the software house side, is that you were
Yes.
expecting this
Yeah.
larger
Yeah.
project to come through that never came through.
Yeah. Exactly. So that was one of the also forming moments because we said, okay, so this could not ever happen. Yeah.
Hmm.
And that gave us some ideas like, okay, so company needs to always earn money. And for example, we set the rule that we need to have like 3 months expenses in a cash on a cash account.
Yes,
Yeah, like even if you can earn some interest on it, no, you keep cash because if no money will flow in the 3 months, we still be able to pay all those people.
exactly,
And by the way, we
exactly.
kept it till the end, even if it's scaled to 400 people. So we
But
always
that's
kept it.
amazing. That's the whole thing, is that I can't tell you the number of people that I talk with or know, either
Yeah,
independent consultants or business owners that have no money in the bank. And my philosophy is very much the same as yours, that I'm probably to another level on that. I definitely have a giant war chest. But that's the whole thing, is that it's all about cash flow and being able to survive those tough times.
Yeah, and that also showed up to be very useful or right choice during COVID, because when the COVID hit, we didn't have to make anything. Like, I mean, not money, but we were able to sit and wait. Yeah, not cut staff or not panic, because we knew we had the cash. And then we
Yes.
said, okay, so let's wait a couple of weeks and see where the market will go. Yeah. So that was definitely one of the forming moments for a company. Then decision that you want to scale. That was also like a decision you need to make, because, okay, you can be 20 people shop. And I have friends who are running company for 12 years and they are still 10 20 people shop.
Right.
And that was the decision. Okay, so we want to scale. We want this company to be bigger. And that requires you to change your mindset and, different decisions to be made. So that's probably happened somewhere along 50 or something people. Then, decisions to start to hire external people that started much later as a management. Yeah. So after 100 something, we said, okay, so maybe we are not that smart. And maybe we should get people from the outside.
So bringing outsiders in was a big challenge too.
Yeah. Yes, because you don't know what you don't know. Yeah, so you want to
Yes.
hire somebody, you don't know his job. Yeah,
Yeah.
so some mishires happened as well, some good hires. But I think that the key learning is that the company is going through the stages, and the stage is typically with the size of a company. Yeah, like you have 10 people, you have these challenges. You have 50 people, you have these challenges, and you need to rethink the entire company. It's not like changing one thing. You need to change the org structure, tooling, your approach, and so on. Yeah. The key learning also is that you need to have your like a compass. Yeah. So what is your North Star, what you're doing? And for us, that was, we are building company. This company has to be global. We don't have to earn like a lot of cash at hand. We can reinvest and then focusing on the things we control. Yeah, like believe it or not, we never had a meeting where we said like we need to do this revenue. That didn't happen for
Really?
first 10 or 11 years. It was
Okay.
like
The Americans are very disappointed to hear that, because I think that starts
no.
every meeting.
We got the meetings. Let's say strategic meetings was like, okay, guys, so we did this. We want to do 40% more. And by the way, we were very deliberate about limiting the growth rate. So we said we want to grow 30 to 40% per year. Why? Because we want to form the company. If you will grow 100% a year, it's really tough.
Yeah, it gets out of
With the
control.
structure. So it was like, okay, so we are here. We want to do 40% more. What is stopping us? And it was like, is it the process of hiring people? Is it sales? Is it this? And then it was, okay, which one is the most important? Yeah, we cannot tackle everything. So it was okay. So right now we need to solve hiring. Yeah. So okay, we need to have a hiring process and so on, so on. Yeah. Next 3 months or next 6 months, it's sales. Okay, so now we hired people. We know how to hire people. We made a lot of mistakes with it.
Oh, sure.
And, so now, okay, so what we need to do to make sales? And everything was backed by the data. And by the way, I think that was one of the key differentiators for us, that we got since the beginning, everything was done on the data, on the numbers. So it wasn't like, okay, what do we think is the sales right now? We don't know. Okay, so first we need to get the data around it and then make a call. We were not doing like out of our guts.
Right.
Hunches. Yeah, we were doing bets like, okay, let's try to conquer Middle East. That required some commitment. I need to admit, like Greg, one of the founders, also he moved for 6 months to Qatar to kickstart the business. Yeah.
Wow.
And by the way, you don't need the great tools for this. Our first CRM was a OneNote. And,
was OneNote.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Believe it or not, so that was for geeks doing company, not for people who knew how to do company.
Right.
So believe it or not, OneNote has API, and you can automate the table in a
So
OneNote.
you automated OneNote as your CRM. That is amazing. That's incredible.
So
are you going to be
like
presenting this at a conference or anything? So
We were later presenting that system and to some other people, and it was always like jaw dropping for them, like what we've built as an internal system to run operations
Right.
of the company.
Well, and it's interesting just to hear your processes before data-driven decisions were popular. It sounds like you were really on the forefront of that type of mindset. And I think it goes back to your accounting background and probably just you growing up with your dad, where you came from that accounting number driven background where
No,
it's.
so here I need to give a credit to Greg Pavel,
Mhm.
like Greg and Pavel. Greg was our CEO for a long time, and that was typically like his mindset,
Okay.
like, okay, what data I need for it, yeah.
Right.
And guys, we don't have a data, we need to gather it, yeah. So, but later I got into this habit, like everybody, and even right now in my private life, actually we did some tooling for a calendar marking for projects.
Uh-huh.
That's totally different story, but I have a habit, so I'm still using it also like privately. And I was inviting one of the founders for some meeting, and I did this in the way we were doing this at the company, and he said like, "Okay, habits die hard," because I still, yeah. But
But
data driven, it's important
yes.
really.
Yeah. Well, that's an amazing story just to hear about that and the data-driven decisions at Predica. So, I guess the next question here is that in my time at working with you and Predica, the one thing that really struck me was the culture that you established. How
Mm-hmm.
it was not just working at a larger company. I mean, Predica, obviously, at your height, 400 people, large organization, but there was just this just wonderful feel whenever I would work with someone from Predica, just the culture, the thought of service, the style. Could you tell us more about how that culture was ultimately built? And was that something that you did consciously, or was that something more organic? What was the thought around culture?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for saying that. I hope a lot of people from the team will hear it. I will make sure they will hear it because I
Okay.
take credit for them.
Yeah.
Uh, Culture, that's very interesting topic. You can do totally separate episode about it.
Sure.
That was deliberate, but not from the beginning. Yeah, so I read all those success stories. They were
Hmm.
great founder from the beginning. Actually, or from a tribe, you were just set for success, and that's
Right.
not true.
Yeah,
Every
definitely
company
not.
at the beginning is in a survival mode. Yeah,
Hmm.
so at the beginning that was okay. We need to survive. We need to learn how to survive. After some time, when we were sure that we have something, like we have this uh, going business, okay, maybe we have some cash and so on. So then we actually ask ourselves as a founders one question, like why we are doing it. Yeah, so
Hmm.
there was I remember we did the offsite and there was a question like, okay, so why you want to do it? If you want to scale it, so why you want to scale, like why you want to grow the company. And it's okay to have a different answers. Honestly, at the first meeting we did about it, we basically didn't have an answer, so we sat
Hmm.
in the room in the hotel for entire day. In the end we said, okay, we survived 3 years without it, so maybe have a whiskey and just survive next year.
There we go.
And this is what we did back then. Had a whiskey, had some chat, and then we get back to it. Yeah. So and then we started from going backwards. Like, okay, so we ask ourselves a question like, why people want to work with us? Yeah.
Hmm.
Like, why, why somebody, like, because we had almost 70% return rate on
Hmm.
with the customers. Like 70% of people who worked with us, even at the end, were doing business with us again. But back then we asked ourselves like why they do it. And we started to list it. And one thing which was there at the top, which might be very surprising for people, it was because we do stuff.
Because
Like
you what?
we do stuff. I mean, if we promise something, we do it.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And that was, maybe it's not obvious, but I sometimes tell people that IT industry set the bar really low to deliver the stuff you promised.
Yes. No, I would totally agree with that.
Yeah. So we said, okay, so we promise what we deliver, like we deliver what we promise, and
Yes.
this makes people work with us. Now, the second thing was like, okay, why they speak with us? And we said, okay, we are fast in responding to them, and also we know stuff, and if we don't agree with them, we are not trying to please them, but we are trying to do what's right.
Mm-hmm.
So we formed those three core foundation, like do stuff, be challenger, and keep delivering, and we formed the entire company around it. And that's about the choice if you want to build a company or just make money. This is what I said
Right.
at the beginning. Yeah, because we said, okay, so we want to have a company, and each of us put some reason why they want to do it, to grow. I remember Pavel's choice. One of the founders was like, he said, whatever we are doing, I just want to enable people to grow. Yeah. Andrzej said he wants to have an impact on the environment, on how
Mm-hmm.
people are doing, and so on. And there was a one common theme, which was we want to avoid doing stupid stuff, like
There you
or
go.
doing the work which is not necessary. Yeah.
Right.
And then the challenge was to craft some idea. But we started with this, like why we do it, why we want to grow, what are the attributes we want to like cherish with the people.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's very deliberate process. Yeah, you want to build this culture, it won't happen.
Right.
You always have some culture. It's a
Sure.
question: are you forging this culture, or are you allowing it to happen?
Right. Right.
And we invested a lot of time into forging the culture. Yeah, so even going from, okay, so those are the signs we want to use, those are the things we will put on the cap. We hired some consultant to help us craft the message, and so on, so on. And then we spent also a lot of time on transmitting this to the people in the company. For example, from the beginning, every new employee at Predica was getting the book Extreme Ownership, because extreme ownership was one of the key principles we wanted. Yeah.
Was that the Jocko Willink book,
Yeah,
Extreme
yeah,
Ownership?
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, Jocko. Yes. Okay.
So everybody was getting this as a part of welcome
Mm-hmm.
package. And then I think that the key aspect is that, because this is all what you can do around how you want to do it, but then people need to see it in action. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're giving them the book Extreme Ownership, they need to see that you're doing this with extreme ownership, and you give them ownership. Yeah.
Yes.
So we were always saying like, okay, so we give you the data, that's data driven. We give you the
Mm-hmm.
principles, the rules we want to, and the values you want to follow. Decision is yours. Yeah. We gave a lot of freedom and like being able to act on the principles. We haven't had like a chain of command strictly controlling what people were
Mm-hmm.
doing. Yeah. And then it also comes to simple stuff, like when we were naming the positions, we didn't have the project manager. Yeah, we got project owner because we wanted people to be owners of a
Ownership. Yeah. It
project.
all goes
Yeah,
back to the culture.
yeah, uh, and to be honest, we were lazy always.
There you go.
So in the end, I always repeated this to the people. We got this ritual or meetings, boosting breakfast, where we were basically, that was also part of a forming culture. And I was telling the people always in this meeting, like, look, the most uninteresting stuff for me to do is to know what you're doing. I
Mm-hmm.
believe you can do your stuff. If you have a data, you have a principles, you have a values which guide you. So you can do whatever you want
Right.
as long as a job is done. Yeah.
Right.
As an anecdote, sometimes it has unexpected consequences when people are not like, people were coming to us from a different environment, and they need to learn again. They need to know that
Mm-hmm.
the stuff we are saying is actually how we work. And there was a one junior guy who joined the company, and our fault was that we haven't prepared work for him, so he didn't have the work.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was sitting at the computer and he was browsing internet. And Grzegorz, our CEO back then, he was like, he has this mindset like, okay, I haven't prepared a work for this guy, so why he should spend his time just browsing the computer? He can go home. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he went to this guy and just said like, go home. That was very shortcut.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And this guy was scared, and I said, "Look, no, relax. You don't have any work from us. You can just go and relax and sit at home. We don't require you to spend just hours sitting
Right.
and doing nothing." Yeah. But yeah, the culture is very deliberate stuff. You need to put a lot of effort, money into it, and what you saw, I'm glad you said that. We haven't agreed on the description you said, but that was exactly what I wanted to hear, because we allowed people to work with you, for example, on their own. They make their calls. So
Right.
for us, project owner was making a call in front of you or a customer.
Right.
I don't have to do this call. They have a data, they have a principles we want to follow, and we really allowed them to make those calls, make a
Well,
decisions, and so on.
well, and to just add on to that is that in my time in working with Predica, we were fortunate enough to do some very complex projects for a number of organizations here in the U.S. And again, quite frankly, in IT, not every project goes perfectly, and there are always going to be challenges, especially on large scale projects. And the one thing now, just looking back on our time together, even when we had problems, I never had to call you up and say,
No.
Tomas, hey, you need to get in here and you need to take care of this problem. It was all very much handled several layers below you. And again, I never really even thought about the that aspect of the way that you infuse the culture of ownership. And it was really, if there was a problem, not that it happened all that often, but I was able to talk with other leaders inside the organization, and it was taken care of. And so, again, that either laziness or self-preservation, your culture definitely worked.
It's not that they weren't consulting, for example. They knew that they can reach out, and that
Mhm.
happened very often. But it's more like a consulting, because ultimately it's their call. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that's a mistake a lot of people are doing. They want to step in front of their people, make sure that the customer is pleased,
Hmm.
speak with some higher ups, and so on and so on. Yeah. But that was the lesson I actually was learned. I was taught at MCS at one of the projects, that you have somebody working with customer, yeah, and then this customer has an issue. This person can handle it for sure. Maybe
Hmm.
they don't have a skill in the communication. Maybe they don't know how to handle it because they haven't handled it before. But the moment you will put yourself in front of this customer knows that this person is not in charge anymore,
Right.
because there is somebody in the back who is calling the shots. So
Hmm.
you don't want it. You can consult with this person, but this person gets back to the customer and solve the issue. Yeah.
Right.
And that has two effects. One, this person is getting more confident. This person is learning something, but also customers knows that this is the person I speak to. Yeah.
Right. Right. This is where the
Because
buck stops, so to speak.
Yeah, because otherwise you will be always drowning in the escalations. They will
Hmm.
next time they will not call this person; they will call you.
Yes, yes. Well, I'd like to just say before we go on to our next topic here, for those listening, the last 15 to 20 minutes of our conversation here are probably worth several $1 million for the listeners. Just if you understand the way that the culture was built at Predica, was just amazing to see. And I would just add again from a cultural perspective in Poland is that idea of extreme ownership and service isn't is that something that is generally culturally accepted, or is that really more of something new that you brought into the Polish culture?
I think that depends on the people, and I
Hmm.
don't think that this is something like general in the population. Yeah,
Right.
but I don't think it's limited to Poland. I
Oh,
think
it's
it's
everywhere. Yeah.
all yes. So it's more about making this call that you want to be an owner of something that might be your life, your time, whatever, and then
Hmm.
acting as such. And totally, I wasn't like that before. I
Yeah.
mean, I know how much I changed during the Predica, yeah, uh, and how much I grew up as well. But it's a decision you're making, and
Right.
then in an organization, you also make this decision to the organization. Like, okay, I want our organization to be an owner of what we were doing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Practically, for example, this means that when you're dealing with the people on the project, so the person who is project owner, he could make any decision on the project. Yeah. So, for example, I wasn't in hiring. If people needed to hire somebody or get external consultant, they were going directly to the recruiter because
Mm-hmm.
they make this call. Yeah. How much do I know about the project you were doing with our shared customer? Nothing. Yeah.
Probably nothing.
Yes.
So,
Sometimes I did a bit. I was still involved in some of those, but so you need to make a conscious decision that you want this culture, you want people to
mm-hmm.
be owners. But then the biggest challenge, and by the way, that's the biggest challenge also for many technical people, is to let go. Yeah. So
I would
you
agree
need to
with
let
that.
go that because they will be making stupid stuff. They
Yeah.
will be making mistakes. And you need to swallow that this is the mistake and maybe explain to them why this is a mistake. Maybe
Yes.
you will need to pull some levers just, to fix it. Maybe you will feel financial pain for it.
Yeah, yes, unfortunately. I've got one of those going on right now. So not with anyone from Poland. So
Yeah, but this part of letting go, letting people, because they will learn, but they need to be allowed to learn. Yeah.
well. Again, I feel like we could talk for probably another hour just about the culture alone. Again, I can't emphasize enough just the incredible culture and what it was like working with the employees from Predica. And to dovetail on what you said about the changes that you see in people, I know in working with a few of the Predica new hires back then, I could see a distinct change over time where some who were very new to the organization that maybe did not have that idea of extreme ownership, um, they had a different mindset and you could tell. But then ultimately, as they were immersed in the Predica culture, they changed very radically. And yeah, it's amazing the just the change in the mindset and the success. So I wanted to. I know that we've probably gone over time here initially to what we had hoped to talk about, but again, just a fascinating conversation. I wanted to switch over to just Poland now. And I remember when I finally got to meet you in person. This is going to sound very sophisticated to say this, but I remember having this conversation in a Polish cafe talking about geopolitics and the history of Poland and all the changes that that country or your country has gone through. I know in growing up, um, Poland was very much a frontier country for Americans, even still today. I don't know if I had told you this, but when I was coming to visit you, my oldest son, and this is probably more of an indictment of the US education system and my parenting. But when I said, well, hey, I'm going to Poland for a week, he's like, isn't that kind of like North Korea? I'm like, no, no,
No.
and that was, I have a graduate degree in international studies and I knew a lot about the country. But I even recall when I was getting ready to fly over, I was thinking, I really do not know what to expect. I went to college in Europe and got to go behind the Iron Curtain in the 80s. And I just remember the starkness of being in Western Europe and then crossing into Hungary and just how different that was. And really, I'll confess now, I had some apprehension about flying in because I really had no idea what to expect. And I remember landing and driving with you through Warsaw and just being amazed at, hey, this was a relatively poor country compared to the rest of Western Europe, and now seeing buildings with U.S. logos on it, and there were Lamborghinis in the streets, luxury cars. Warsaw is a very vibrant city. I was stunned. And, my friends here that I travel with, I think they get tired of me talking about how much I enjoyed that trip to Poland. But now with the war and everything that is going on over there, where do you see the future of Poland going? And again, I'm not turning this into a political show, but
Hmm.
just where do you see the direction of the country going?
Before that, and you will blame me for making the show a bit longer, is I need to say that and give you a credit because I remember how you described how we like started to do business together.
Hmm.
For listeners, I was trying to establish our US presence,
Yeah.
and I was just calling random people. And I remember you said that you were driving from a customer in the rain in the car, and then this guy from Poland just called you and said,
Yes.
"Do you want to do business together?"
Yeah,
So for your credit, you didn't discard me as a nuts, and that's where the magic happened again.
exactly.
Poland. Poland is a great country, and I say that's Polish, and we Polish or like we Poles
Hmm.
very often can discredit our own country. That's what we do. But Poland is a great country right now. We did like tremendous growth and change over 20 years. So I arrived to Warsaw around 2001, and believe me or not, 10 p.m. there was no place you can go out and eat. Yeah,
Wow.
that was like everything was closed.
Yeah.
There was no high rises there was only one high rise back then. There was like two, the Russian gift.
Yeah.
Uh, we
Sure.
have a building which is built by Russia, and then there was a Marriott hotel that was first like commercial building in Warsaw. All the offices were there and so on. Right now we have a beautiful skyline. So it changed a lot. You can really see it in the country because to get me to my mom with a car 20 years ago, that was 10-hour drive. Right now it's 4. So
Wow.
it's yeah. So I can in 4 hours I can be on the German border.
Hmm.
So it says a bit about infrastructure.
Yes.
Uh, and I was even surprised as a Pole to know that over the last 25 years, we were like a fast growing country in the
Hmm.
world. I think we even grew faster than India,
I
or we
believe
were
it.
second.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that takes us to the moment we are right now. So the war in Ukraine started. It doesn't have any effect on Poland. I mean, on a daily basis. Yeah, because also to make it, put it in a perspective, because during the process, like the company selling process, we were speaking with some people from US as well,
Hmm.
and one of them said like, "Okay, so you have a war at the border," and I said, "No, that's in Ukraine."
Yeah.
And actually, right now I'm hosting a family from Ukraine, and to get here, they were 25 hours on a train, and then on a
Wow.
bus, and then on a train. Yeah, it's 1,000 kilometers from here.
Yeah.
It still is like putting a bit of uncertainty for a country, but with all of that, I think Poland will grow still economically because of all the people who are doing the work here.
Yes.
Yeah. And last 20 years showed that regardless of a government, regardless of left or right
Hmm.
ruling the country is growing. Why?
Yes.
Because people want to like live better.
Sure. Sure.
So for this, I'm confident that Poland will be the important country in Europe economically for sure. We have an enormous talent. We have a lot of universities, a lot of people who has different mindset. They know that right now they are citizens of the world,
Hmm.
honestly, and they are not afraid to go and grab. Uh, I'm not sure what will be the world's geopolitical situation in 10 years. Yeah,
Sure.
so a lot might happen.
Yes.
Short term, next 10 years, probably not that drastically, but it's a lot of uncertainty. But I bet on Poland. I'm not moving out from here. I built my house here. I have my family here. My kids are growing up here. I think we will be good, mostly because, as I said, when I was describing how I get my computer, we are very good at handling
Yes.
the shadows.
Very resilient. Very resilient
Yes.
people.
Uh, but it's complicated right now. So you cannot think like, okay, so it will be all rosy for the next 20 years. You have to take
Hmm.
into account that the war is actually in the neighbor country.
Yes.
But if the war or any kind of that geopolitical event will happen, I think it will affect all of us. So it's not
Yes.
only Poland, yeah. But I don't think we'll see like a shooting war in Poland for next forever, hopefully.
Hopefully.
But I'm positive. I'm positive.
Yes.
I'm more concerned about Europe as a whole, but that's
Yeah,
totally
that's
different story.
that's another show. That's another show because I could talk about that
Yeah.
for quite a while as well. Well, Tomas, this has been absolutely fascinating, absolutely wonderful. Again, congratulations to you and your founders on just your incredible success and everything that you've done. Tell us about what you're up to lately. Now that you're out of Predica, you've got your own podcast. Tell us a little bit about that and what you're up to lately.
So yes, I'm like Predica is incorporated into Software One, so I'm still employed as a Software One right now.
Okay.
I change. I'm employed, not
Okay.
employing. But I still like we were looking at the merging process, and we took care about people and so on. And right now, assuming some roles at Software One, so I'm still working with the company and the organization. That's on the professional front. On the more like a private or community. So as I said, Poland is growing, but we are missing one thing. And that was something, by the way, I noticed when I was first time on the MVP Summit. Yeah, I've met all those wonderful guys from around the world. And I remember I've met Gil Kirkpatrick. I don't know if you know him.
Who?
Gil Kirkpatrick. He was from Australia right now.
Okay.
With our friends from St. Paris, I think.
Okay.
He was back then working with NetPro.
Okay.
And Gil, no offense, but he was much older than I am. Yeah, like I was back then like 20 something, and he was like 50 probably or something.
Oh wow. Okay.
And then I saw, because that was what we were missing. Like we were missing the experienced people, because there was no computer people before.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So literally when I started, there was nobody to learn from. There was no IT people before. I started 90s.
Yeah. No one in Poland had that computer background. Yeah. You were the first. Yeah.
Maybe not completely first, but that was the first batch. And yes, time passed by. And we have right now a lot of IT companies in Poland. Really, it is booming. We have lots of Polish companies. Probably you're using everyday products we are developing here for other companies mostly. That's something we need to work on. And we are starting to have like a product people and so on. And then I thought like, okay, so what I can pay back, like pay forward for those people. And we identified with a friends that, okay, so actually there are people who are like IT people, developers, I don't know, system administrators, whatever. And they come to this position that they want to grow into the leadership, but there is no forum for technical leadership people in Poland. And we decided to establish one. So yes, I'm running the show called CTO Morning Coffee. We're also recording like a brew, which is our commentary to the technical world, and not only. But the ultimate goal of it is to create a forum and a community of senior technical people or people who are aspiring to it, to help people develop this more experience, like how to learn from the people who actually have experience. Yeah. So we are trying to create this missing puzzle, which is connecting the young people or aspiring people with the people who actually had some career already, developed some skill and so on. Yeah. So that's the mission we put in front of us.
Wow. How many episodes are you up to now on the podcast?
So that's probably 40 something.
Okay.
We're running a Twitter space every 2 weeks, and then we are recording a video every 2 weeks. And we enjoy it a lot.
Good. Yeah, definitely. I'm sure it's got to be incredibly rewarding. My one request would be that you've got to do it in English so I can understand what's going on.
That can happen. And by the way, that's one of the Polish, yesterday we got the news that one of the Polish companies was elevated to the unicorn status because they got the investment from Andreas Horowitz and others. So they are valued after around 1 billion right now. It's
wow.
11 labs. And what they do, they can make you talk Polish and in your own voice, because they are doing voice cloning using AI. Yeah.
Okay.
So, and by the way, that's brilliant. So probably we'll bring some of this content to English as well.
All right. Very good. Very good. I can't wait to see that in action. Well, Tomasz, just again, congratulations to you and your founders on your amazing success. Again, for the listeners out there, just the understanding of how Predica's culture was built, I think this makes this episode worth a tremendous amount of money. I know that I'm going to be going back and listening to it several times, and I'm going to double down on my Jocko Willing podcast and keep listening to Jocko as well. So, Tomasz, again, thank you so much for coming on, and again, we wish you all the best in Warsaw and Poland. And I certainly, you're back on my list to come back and visit soon. I love Poland, and I can't wait to come back and visit. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having
All
me,
right.
and you're always welcome.
Thank you.